rich men north of Richmond, Lord knows they all just wanna have total control. Living in
That is such a valuable piece of advice there.
These are the sorts of things that we should talk about right in the first 5 minutes of the podcast.
Started giving people free quotes.
Isn't sunshine and rainbows
Definitely a thing for just being a solo
The
operator.
change in mindset makes a massive difference.
Welcome to Aussie Lawn Stars.
When you run a business and you're on your own, you're doing everything, right? But you can just focus on what you do well. So you can just go out there and make sure that garden looks crisp, make sure that lawn looks crisp, make sure that customer knows they're getting value for money, right? And you're doing everything you need to do, right? You may have a terrible business because you might not be charging right. You may lose customers because there's a customer you didn't care about and you didn't know how to handle those customer relationships well. But on your own, it's one thing. Once you start employing people, then instead of doing everything like that and being able to be accountable for yourself and nobody cares, right? Because if something goes wrong, it's on you. Nobody else is there. The moment you've got 1 employee or 10 employees, you are a completely different person. And you might not see that because you don't feel like you're a different person, but instead of just being self-employed, you are now a manager. You are now a HR team. You're now a marketing team because you've got to find enough work for all of those people. You are also an accountant and a business planner because you've got to make sure you're charging the right amount. If you listen to some of my episodes where I talk about first employee and I wasn't paying enough, I wasn't charging enough to be able to pay them and make money.
You probably should be a class in like the parks and gardens or your horticulture or even design and landscaping is a business class. It should be a people management section. It should be, if you're looking to go out on your own, you need to understand that you're now dealing with 5, 6, 7 personalities, 7 different needs. I'm quite lucky. My wife is in management in a big retail company and she helps a lot, but she tells me not to worry about the little things, but when it's your company, it's all you worry about. Like, it's so easy when it's just yourself and all right, well, I've got to get up, I've got to do 8 hours. But when it's 4 or 5 or 6 or 10 or whatever, you got to get up, do your 8 hours, get a phone call that someone's sick, get an email that someone needs to take half a day later on, or you got to make sure you've got all the money for all the leave coming up, another public holidays coming up, another public holidays coming up, and all this stuff that's got nothing to do with gardening. It's so different between being a sole trader and running a decent company. And by all means, I don't think I am the superstar businessman, but we've got this far, so we're doing something right. But for me, the business side is the new, I don't know, it's not, it's what you're getting educated on. Like, whether you're doing it right or wrong, you need to be learning from it and go, okay, well, this worked, so we need this kind of person in our team, or we need someone for this reason, opposed to this is the job.
Yeah.
Can you meet the job?
I interviewed a guy in West Australia, Brendan Winterbottom, I get it right. And he's got somewhere between 120 and 150 employees. Right. So the take-home message I got from him is that it's really hard for you or I to go from being self-employed to beating all of the issues of having 5 to 10 employees.
I've got a lot of friends that
it is really hard.
We're quite close in the industry in Melbourne. I'm sure it's the same up there, but we've got a lot of friends in the industry and a lot of friends in landscaping, hardscaping, design, and it's the same thing every time. You go, okay, one person's easy, 1 to sort of 4 is a good number, then 4 to 8 is sort of your next number, and it gets a bit more difficult. And then most people I spoke to, anything above 12 just becomes such a headache. And majority of the guys I know that have gotten that big have always ended up downsizing, and because 1, they're no longer on the tools, so they're not enjoying themselves, and 2, it is just a people management job. Then it's not if you're happy to go out and sell yourself and be the front of the house and go to all the clients and say, yep, this is good. But you need to know quality control, and that's the hardest part. For me, I've got such a high personal standard, and I personally find it hard to express that to my staff and be like, oh, you should have done this or whatever. I'm not the guy that's going to be like, what are you doing? Your stuff I like tiptoe around stuff, but and then I'll probably just end up doing it myself, which I know is not helping anyone, but I find it hard to, I guess, not manage or punish, but it's you need to be able to teach people the right way, and learning how your staff learn, whether it's by book or by doing or by being shown. It takes time, and that's with every staff member. You've got to give them enough time to fit the mold. Otherwise, you got to. It just depends on what you want out of your business, I guess. And I'm just starting to learn that now, where it's more about business than it is about doing a garden every day. It's more about the bigger picture.
So I'm not the expert here, but I'm going to say a couple of things that I've learned from other people, having done 150 something interviews now. So there's a guy down your way, Matthew Wandmaker. I don't know if you've heard of him. He started out as a gyms franchise. He left the gyms network because he got to the stage where he wasn't getting the benefits of the systems anymore. Not that they weren't beneficial. He still says it was a great platform for him to start on, and he recommends people use gyms as a way to start a good, successful business. But he's now at the stage where he's got, I think, probably more than 10 employees. Last time I talked to him, I think he might have said 12 employees off the top of my head. So it is possible to grow that size. And the way I look at it is I want to hang around people that I can learn from. So I talk to Matthew and he helps educate me. And I'd recommend it for anybody who's going through that stage of business. It's like, talk to the people who you can learn from. One of the lessons I see out there is if you start out as an individual, the first thing you do when you put on an employee is you try and micromanage them. But I've done this, right? So they work beside me. They're my shadow. Do what I say. Act when I tell you to, and basically be an exact shadow of me.
Yeah,
it never works well when you do that. So then you go, okay, the next stage of learning as an employer is to set the expectations on your staff so that they know what the expectations are and they can choose to meet them. If they're realistic expectations, then that employer-employee relationship might work reasonably well. But very quickly you go from having one staff member to two. And then this is where it gets interesting. If you have two staff, you might need to choose one of them to be a leader and the other one to work for that person rather than you being the leader. And you might get to 5 or 6 staff before you get to that point. I really need a team leader so I can send out 2 or 3 people on one job
sure,
and I don't have to be
the way
there.
we run it is, at the moment there's only the 4 of us on the tools, but it'll be, we sort of have, everyone knows their place within the company. And so if it's 2 of the guys go out, they know who's taking responsibility of talking to the client and putting down the notes on. We use an app called Fergus to take all our notes and do all our rostering and stuff like that. So there'll be one person in charge of that. I didn't micromanage. I don't like to micromanage, but all of my staff that I've hired have always had either a certificate in horticulture or a minimum of 5 years, and then I give them the freedom to show me that they're good enough, or they know what they're doing. And I ask them, do you know, if you say you know what you're doing, then sure, go do it. If they don't do it right, then we might revisit it. And I go, well, can you do it this way? Or next time, can we do it this way? But I understand that I don't know everything, and maybe these people are going to come in and show me something. So maybe it's like giving them enough rope to hang themselves with, but I don't see it like that. It's more, I give people the freedom to do it their way. Cause even just holding a whippersnapper, there's so many different ways that someone's comfortable with it. I can't be like, this is my way, do it my way. It just doesn't work. Like you've got to let people find what they're comfortable with. Even, just down to the point of whether someone whippersnips the edges first or mows first or something like that. Just something so like minimal, but I've always done it, whip a snip first, then mow up the clippings and stuff like that. And they might say, oh, no, I like to mow first, so then I know where the mower doesn't get to. And it's like, okay, well, I never thought about it like that. Like, you can't jump on someone's neck for doing it their way if the result's what it needs to be. I just care about the end result. I don't care about how we get there.
And I guess this is where if you send out a crew of 2 or 3 people, one person there being a team leader, they are in charge of the expectations on that particular job, right? So like you said, they're responsible for talking to the client. And if the client notices something out of place, that's the person the client's going to come and talk to as well. So that shifts the load of expectations from you to your team leader. And then when you grow the next stage in your business, you start putting on somebody to manage employees or to manage your bookkeeping or whatever else it might be. And that allows you to step back a little bit from some of those things. So I think, and this, I'm speaking out of shop here, I haven't achieved that yet. But that's the way I look at it is, okay, I've got one employee at the moment. If I'm going to grow my business further, the next stage is to make sure, like you, find the right employee that has the right qualifications or experience, and then start grouping and finding another manager that's going to then manage the employees or manage the management of the business, so that those things which I'm not comfortable doing at that scale need to be paid for by the amount of work that's being done.
The guys I've got now, they're all pretty comfortable on the tools and things like that, and I can send them out comfortably by themselves. It's a good place to have, we've got jobs where it's easy, rather than having 2 guys for 4 hours at 2 jobs, you just go, okay, well, one person 8 hours, we'll just go separate today. And I know that a standard of work's being done.
Yeah.
When I went to company format from sole trader, I decided to get a bookkeeper straight away just to take care of it, so I wasn't missing anything. With employees, I just didn't want anyone to ever say that I was ripping them off or something. They were missing out on something, or I was covering my own bum, but I just didn't want anyone to ever feel upset about what they were being paid or anything like that. And so I know the guys that work for me, like, they just laughed so hard when I told them what I got paid as an apprentice. Like, I think it was $290 a week I was clearing for 40 hours. And it was just, I was busting my guts and just going nowhere, eating dry bread rolls and a box of shapes every day for lunch, because it was like $2.70 for lunch. But nowadays, people come in and they make a comfortable wage. They just need to know that there's a standard that they need to meet to get that comfortable wage from me. I don't care how they get there, as long as they get to a standard. That's how I see it. I'm not going to nitpick or micromanage someone. It might bug me how someone does something, but as long as they get the result, the more people you put on, I see you need to take a step back almost every time and let them. I learned better by doing it myself, so maybe that's how they'll learn too.
Yeah, for sure. So, Andy, I've set out a goal in my podcast, and it's applicable to my business as well. They both are businesses in a sense, but let's talk about this in the podcast. The way that I'm going to improve my podcast is by hanging around people that do it better than I do. Welcome to Aussie Lawn Stars. Do you want to leave your job to create a profitable and enjoyable lawn and garden business? Aussie Lawn Stars shares the stories, lessons and advice to help you grow a healthy, productive, efficient and sustainable business. Do you want more, or simply have a question about what you heard? Contact Aussie Lawn Stars at iCloud.com or look me up, Gary Ashton, on Facebook and Messenger for individual help. Business coaching helps you to have the right mindset and perspective when it comes to daily decision making, planning, or knowing what to look for to improve your business. thinktankcoaching.com.au has helped me, and they can help you move towards your business goals. Visit their website or email them, thinktankcoaching@outlook.com. If you want to establish the best practices in bookkeeping, accounting, and business structure, contact Adrian from Prosper Financial on 0249 773363. And you all need to head to Lawn Mowing Contractors Australia and the Australian Professional Lawn Contractors Facebook groups for supportive communities focused on our industry. So I want to be able to call up Alan Jones or Hamish and who are some of the other people who are famous in Australia for doing broadcasting work. I want to be able to talk to those people or at least listen to their podcast and go, what is it that they do that I can emulate, that I can copy, that I can improve? And I find the same true with business, which is why I mentioned Matthew Wanmaker. He's one of those people I want to learn from. And Brendan over in WA, they're the people I want to learn from. So one of the things you mentioned here, and I do this podcast for this reason, I ask you the hard questions, and then the people who listen to my podcast get to learn from the 150 people I've interviewed. So when you started your business, before you put on employees, you would have had in mind roughly how much money you needed to make to know that you were doing okay. Is that, I see a smile there. Is that true, or is that a guess game? Guessing
honestly,
it,
I was
hoping.
young and dumb enough to just be happy with any money coming in. As long as I could pay rent, I was happy. Especially coming off doing an apprenticeship, you just earned nothing as an apprentice. Like it was, the wages are so much better now as an apprentice than it was when I did it. You just had nothing, and I was renting a little share home out in Coburg, and it was, if you had petrol in the car and enough whippersnipper cord that you could go to work, then I was happy. But it was it doesn't take long before you start getting a few responsibilities, and all of a sudden you go, oh geez, I need to pay that bill, and I'd like to go on a holiday, so I need a bit more money, and geez, maybe we should get married, or all of a sudden you start to need a bit more money. And when I first started, it was $20 cash. It was, if you want to call it cowboy stuff, it probably was. I guess the difference was I did schooling and an apprenticeship behind me, and I was wearing uniforms and stuff like that. And it didn't take long to get signage on the ute. So I don't know what the difference between, I guess it was, I was pushing to get those bigger jobs straight away, opposed to happy taking whatever. I was happy being paid, but there was always an ambition to get bigger.
I feel like I'm in good company then, because we both started as cowboys in a sense.
Cooper, it's look, it depends on what you define a cowboy. In our company, I mean, it's not a derogatory term or anything, but we call the guys joggers. The guys that come in, they're wearing runners, they take a mower off the trailer, they run with a mower, do a nature strip or whatever it is, put their invoice in the mailbox, and they're gone like a smoke bomb. Boom. And there's a place for them. Like, I don't want that work. They don't want the work I want. So it's not cowboys versus qualified or whatever you want to call it. Whatever. It's just everybody has their own part of the industry. It's just you need to find out which part you want to be working in, I guess.
So when I started my business, it was 2010, and you would have been pretty young then. I was a lot younger too. But back in 2010, I was aiming for $50 an hour, and I thought that was pretty good. And that's, hourly rates versus job rates is neither here nor there. I'm not telling the customers I was after $50 an hour, but it didn't take them rocket science to sit there. How long was he here? What did I pay him? So what I'm getting at, and I don't mind sharing with people that I stuffed it up, because it's something that they need to think about, and something that you've thought about, something that I've thought about, and something I've changed. So I went from $50 an hour to, when my accountant gave me a boot up the bum, I was like, all right, I've got to aim for $60 an hour. And the accountant was like, no, 70 plus GST, because you're going to be needing to collect GST. 70 plus GST is minimum. And that was in. And now I'm looking at it going, you know what? The hourly rate is less significant to me, but it's still a good talking point. So I'm curious with you if you can talk about how that's affected you, where you're up to. For me, I look at it and I go, rather than an hourly rate, for per employee, consider myself as an employee, I need to be hitting turnover. So this is for a business that doesn't have a lot of materials costs. So turnover, I need to be hitting minimum of $80,000 per employee and more like $120,000 to $150,000 per employee. And with the cost of living going up, why not make it a little bit more than 150 and say, well, maybe 170,000 per employee would be getting close at the higher end.
Yeah.
And I know there's people do a lot more.
Look, in the last sort of 18 months, it'd be now? Yeah, 18 months. What I've been setting up my company format opposed to sole trader, I took a massive whack financially just to try and build the business. So going as a sole trader was $20 an hour, $30 an hour, $50 an hour, $60 an hour. You're cruising along, you're getting money extra for green waste, you're doing things. It all adds up. But then it's pretty quick that you have to start doing it properly. So you got insurances, you got public liability. We look after schools, so you have to be insured up to 20 million. You got, your overheads grow pretty rapidly. Yeah. I think I worked it out the other day. It's like $87,000 we have to earn before we can pay a single cent to anyone, just with bookkeeper fees, insurances, software. It adds up real quick. We've just bought a second ute, so it's in more petrol, more insurances, everything like that. For us, most of our jobs, whether it's an hourly rate or a set rate, it works out to be about, give or take, 85 plus GST per person an hour, per person per hour, $85. So we're not, by all means, we're not the upper echelon. We know guys that are charging way more than that. And we also know people that are charging less than that. I think we're about bang average. But as I said, we're majority of the time running two guys. So you're looking at about 170 an hour, which on the invoice starts to look a bit heavier.
Yeah.
It just depends on what you're doing.
Yeah. A lot of people get hung up on that hourly rate when there's more than one employee on the job, right? Because it does look like it's crazy. But if you're talking man hours versus the actual time that you're on the job, man hours, it's two people, it's double the amount of hours.
And as I said earlier, as long as you're showing your worth and you're pushing, you just can't, you don't want to be standing in the middle of a lawn on your phone or something, and the client looks out their window like, what are we even paying this guy for? You got to... You want the client to come out and be like, geez, it looks good. Like it's so natural. It's so perfect. I want to tell my friends about these people. You don't want them to come out and be like, what did that invoice say? It's, you just, for the money. I mean, I've had jobs, $40 an hour, $60 an hour, $70. I've got still a few on $70 an hour, but I've been doing them for 12 years, so I feel not that I owe. You go.
Can we? I know that hourly rate is really subjective, even though it sounds like an objective number. It is really subjective. So a lot of people will listen to this and they'll be like, "Oh, that's really low," because there are people out there that are charging, and on average, people are charging around $100 to $120 an hour. It seems, right? I think if you take into consideration the size of the job, the hourly rate pales in significance. So if you go, all right, what's your day rate? And compare it to somebody else. And I'm not asking, you don't have to answer this, but to compare somebody who says they're charging $120 an hour, but they're doing 20-minute jobs. So their average hourly rate over the day might mean they're still making $700 for the day per person, rather than like what you would expect at $120 an hour is that they're making $1,200, $1,500 for the day, when in actual fact, their billable hours are not that high. So you're on one job for 8 hours straight at, say, 85.
Exactly.
With two people, then your hourly rate's not even
it's not really,
measurement there in that sense, right?
For us,
and I see this
we probably
all the time.
are still on the low side. Look, I listen to this podcast and the Australian Lawns and Gardens podcast and stuff like that, and I hear these crazy numbers like 150 an hour and I'm like, that can't be 8 hours a day every day, 40 hours a week. Like, what are these guys doing? Like, but I think maybe it's just the lawn mowing side of things is just, I don't know, maybe it's just a different, even though we're in the same industry, it's a different job. You know what I mean? Like it's I don't think I'm cheap, but I also know that we're definitely not the highest out there. It's just so competitive in Melbourne. Like,
Well,
Melbourne is
this
a
is why I talk
really,
about
really
the annual
competitive
amount.
market. So if you're getting the jobs you want to be doing and you're comfortable, I guess for me, it's about being happy at work opposed to being ultra wealthy. Don't get me wrong, I still want to make more money, but you've got to make sure you're paying your bills.
Yeah.
And if you're happy at the end of that, then yeah, I guess that's the real pay. It sounds pretty woo-woo, but yeah.
This is why I talk about the annual amount. So I expect for a staff member that's working full time that I'm going to be able to charge them out at $150,000 a year. Divide that by the job. So if it's a job where I'm there 1 day a week, then that's 1/5 of $150,000 a year.
Well, it's
not
well,
hard
that's the
maths
thing.
to
Like,
work
I've
it
got
out, but
4
it's there.
guys. We're all on different wages. It's the day rate is you need to be able to cover their wage plus cover your insurances plus cover any overheads. And then you get extras, which is how you do things like buy the next ute for the company, or you get that depot you need, or you do what you need to do. I don't think, unfortunately, I think the industry is built on other people's backs, so to speak. It's you have to make money through staff. You're not going to make it. You're not going to walk onto a garden and go, hey, give me $2,000 for the next 3 hours because I'm Andy from Leaf by Leaf. You know what I mean? It's not going to happen. You just need to build up a client list that's paying you what you require to live, and then you work on that. And that's what I've done from the shitty little gardens to where we are now. It's just you keep building. Like you said, go 1% more, 1% more, and maybe next year we revisit how much we charge and go, well, we've got too many clients. We'll put our price up, and if we lose a couple, so be it. We're still at the same amount of money, but we might also put on a fifth, a sixth, a seventh person in staff, and then the company's you keep those clients and the company's making a good, consistent income every time, and you're still building on that profit margin every time. I think that's the way I want to do it, opposed to try and just get 1, 2, 3, 4 big clients. It's more about a portfolio of clients that I'm happy with, I suppose, is the way to look at it.
I look at it and I go, okay, if my employee is being charged out at $80,000 for the year, then as a full-time employee, then that's not enough. Like it'll be okay if you are the only employee. If you're the boss, you're the business owner, and you're working solo, not running a company, just on your own, $80,000 a year, you'll survive. It won't be great, but you'll survive. But when you're running employees, $80,000 a year is their minimum. It's not great. If you're charging them out at $100,000 a year, you're probably okay. If you're up, like I said, those numbers before, $150,000 to $170,000 a year is where I'm
that's
aiming
realistically what I'm aiming for too. When I was a sole trader before I went into full time, I mean, this is probably as cowboy as it got. We were running subbies. Majority of people, it was you'd work for me 40 hours a week, but you'd have to invoice me. So then there's no leave and things like that. And I made really good money like that, but it's not, you can't do that. People deserve their rights. And I hated, when I left where I did my apprenticeship, I hated the way people were treated there and how little they were paid. And I don't ever want that. Like, I want people to be happy to come, and I want them to be comfortable to live. I don't want anyone ever struggling for lunch. It's like, that's shit. You need to provide a good, happy place for people to work.
Yeah. Subcontractors have a place in this world, but when you're running a business and you're talking about staff retention and making sure that your employee respects you and wants to keep working for you, then you're talking a different game rather than just, I want to pay a subcontractor because it's really easy and I don't have to pay their leave. It's I've been through the same. I've done that. I've had subcontractors, so I'm not judging.
I was just cruising along doing my thing, and then my brother started working with me, and then he had a kid, and things got a bit more responsible, and then we took on a subcontractor maybe 2 days a week, and then it was 3 days a week, and then it was we need someone to just come and weed for 8 hours here, and all of a sudden you've got 5, 6, 7 guys that you sort of rinsing through in 2 years because no one's happy that, you know, they don't want to come and weed for 8 hours. They're like, oh, what's going on? So you get proper people that want to be in the industry. I think a lot of people think this job is like a safety net. Oh, I can always just get a lawn mowing run or do whatever. I know you had a different job before, but you're not just looking at it as a safety net. You're looking at it as a career. And that's what it is for me. Like, I want to build a business. I don't want to I don't know. I'd like to build something that people recognize as a good business. I don't want it to just, you know, be Andy cut my grass and left. I'd like them to be like, geez, leaf by leaf, we're good.
Yeah. And I know I started out like that. It was a safety net. It was like, I can do this, so I can do it well, but I can do it for a short period of time. But
the thing is, it's not a hobby. And you would have learned that really quick. Like, if you want good results, it's not a hobby. Like, you've got to put in, and you've got to know what you're doing. And even if it's like, all right, we're coming into winter, so we've got to lift the mower plate and things like that. Like, it's not growing. So it's just little tricks that you learn. And it's a really weird thing to try and teach someone, especially a young apprentice, that, all right, we're pruning this thing hard, really hard, like a Robinia mop top or something. We're going to bring it back right to the trunk, and it looks dead. And then in 4 months' time, it's going to be lush and green and beautiful. Yep. And then next year, we're going to do it again. And in the meantime, the client paid us to cut it, paid us to get rid of the waste, paid us to fertilize it, to cut it, to fertilize it, to get rid of the waste. And it's just, it's like hairdressing for plants, I guess. But I don't know. You know, you go to the barber, you get a bad barber, and you get a good barber. You don't go back to the bad barber. You might not tell them that, but you just don't go back. You just don't phone them. You know, exactly. Your guy cuts your grass bad, you just don't call him back. And that's, I want to build the business to a point where it's no one ever thinks that we're bad. And as I said, we took a little bit of I didn't take a financial hit, but I'm investing into the business at the moment, opposed to trying to take all the cream off the top. I'm putting it back now to build something, opposed to just, it's going on holidays all the time. I'm putting it in buying more tools, buying more utes. Soon it'll be like a proper depot. It's building a business opposed to just, smashing it for cash, I guess.
Yep. Yeah, Andy, I feel like I've tormented you to within an inch of your life at the moment, asking you all the hard questions. Let's take a short break.
Thank you for listening to Aussie Lawn Stars. Please remember to rate and review the show on the Apple Podcasts app or the player you use. Exciting new shows are released every Monday. Make sure you follow or subscribe to hear the next episode.